The black 1967 Chevy Impala that Jason Statham calls the Black Mamba rolls lazily through the grimy streets of the Los Angeles ghetto. The car has been through a lot: bullets, baseball bats, a rain of shrapnel. Statham holds the wheel with one hand, the other resting on the armrest. His shaved head glints slightly in the streetlights. Johnny Cash's "God's Gonna Cut You Down" plays on the speakers, the bass notes rolling like a heavy weight, squeezing his chest. Mark is in the passenger seat. Tall, thin, with a shock of curly white hair. He plays a silver lighter, flicking the cap open. The speed is exactly 40 miles per hour. Not fast, not slow. You can't attract attention in the ghetto. Outside the window, a nightmare reigns. Broken streetlights create the illusion of semi-darkness, which plays with shadows on the walls. Dumpsters are burning on every corner, and the fire casts red reflections on the graffiti-covered walls. Somewhere on the sidewalk lies a pair of shoes, too clean for this place. There are dark stains on the walls, blood or just dirt, no one can tell. Mark yawns and looks out at the street. These areas remind me of black coffee. Statham does not take his eyes off the road. Too bitter. No, it's not that. You know, when you drink black coffee without sugar, at first you feel its harshness. Such a sharp, strong taste. But if you hold it in your mouth, then after a couple of seconds, you begin to distinguish details. A little caramel, a slight sourness. That's how it is here. At first it seems to you that this is just a whole hell on earth. But then you see the details, the people who survive by selling shit, the guys on the corners shooting dice, dreaming of better days, the buskers who don't even know who they're playing for. You mean the ghetto has flavor? I mean there are different kinds of darkness. It's not just black. It's tinted. Statham pauses, thinking. He blows smoke out of his cigar through his nose. You know, he says, you just reminded me of this guy from Brooklyn. He used to say darkness was like barbecue sauce. Mark chuckles. Oh, come on, enlighten me. He was like, look, Jason, darkness is like sauce. You can just throw it on top and it'll be superficial and simple. But if you give it time to soak in, it'll permeate everything. So if you live in the dark long enough, you become it. Mark chuckles. Well, it turns out this neighborhood's been in the marinade for a long time. Right. And now we need to find a piece of meat named Max before he becomes part of the sauce. The car slows in front of Big Joe's. The red neon sign flickers, as if trying to decide whether to continue to exist. The parking space out front is the only one available, because no one wants to leave their car in this neighborhood for more than 5 minutes. Statham turns off the engine. The car is silent. If we get shot, put a cigar in my coffin, Mark says, getting out of the car. If we get shot, Statham replies, there won't be anyone to put us in coffins. They head toward the diner. Ahead lies the search for Max, who may no longer be Max. Dear viewer, I think it's time to subscribe, like and click the bell, so you'll let me know if you like my stories and you'll always be the first to know when new videos are released. I took 5 seconds of your time, I apologize, you can continue watching. Big Joe's is a place where the deep fryer has been bubbling since the 80s and the coffee can dissolve rust. The air is heavy with the smell of overcooked bacon, spilled beer, and cheap tobacco. The floor is greasy, the furniture is old, with dark stains from spilled ketchup and other liquids whose origins are best left unexplained. A yellowed, handwritten menu hangs on the walls. Burgers, fries, and coffee are the 3 main dishes of the place. In the far corner, an old TV flickers, showing a silent report on some kind of shootout hell somewhere down the block. No one is watching. Joe is standing behind the counter, a big guy with tattooed arms like an old diary full of stories. His face is sweaty, and his dirty apron looks like it's been through Vietnam. He wipes his plate with a rag that looks dirtier than the plate itself. Statham and Mark walk inside. As soon as the door closes, the conversations at the tables stop for a split second, just long enough to size up the newcomers and decide if they're worth fearing. Statham heads to the bar, leaning on his elbows. Joe. Joe looks up lazily, then slowly resumes scrubbing his plate. I haven't seen you in a while, Jason. You need something, then. I need a guy. Name's Max. Joe puts his plate down and throws the rag over his shoulder. Max. Sounds like a guy who doesn't pay his bills. I'd say a guy who's in deep shit. Mark sits down next to Statham, throws a bill on the bar. Pour us some coffee, Joe. And tell us what you know. Joe silently pours 2 cups from an old coffee pot. The liquid is thick as oil and smells like a few drops of fear have been added to it. Why are you suddenly interested in Max? Joe asks, pushing the cups towards them. Statham takes the coffee, takes a sip, without wincing. Because Max is a friend. And friends don't get abandoned. Mark grins crookedly, crossing his arms. Jason, let's be honest. Max is not the kind of friend who will bail you out if you ask. He's not the kind of friend who will say, dude, I'm with you until the end. Max is the kind of friend you drag along with you until he drags you down. Statham glances at him sideways. What, did you study philosophy? I just know the good shit from the bad. Joe listens to them, then sighs and leans against the counter. Okay, guys, I'll put it this way. Max has been here a couple of times. Always looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Eyes like a man who's seen too much bad in too little time. Last time he was here was with the wolf pack. Yeah, Mark nods. And I'm pretty sure they didn't bring him here for a cup of tea. Joe rubs his bald head with his palm. These bastards don't drink tea. They drink blood. Statham sets his cup down on the counter, leans closer. Where'd they get that? Joe stares at him for a minute, then glances back at the money next to the coffee pot. Red Moon. A nightclub that serves more than just alcohol. Max was there a week ago. With them. Mark shakes his head. I have one question. Go ahead. Did Max come to them himself or was he dragged in? Joe shrugs. This is the ghetto, man. Nobody does anything for themselves here. Everything that happens to you happens because of other people. Statham stands up. It's time to move. Mark finishes his coffee in one gulp, wincing. This is crap. You're just not used to it yet. They leave, and Joe watches them go, shaking his head. If you had a brain, you'd have left this town already. But a brain isn't what drives people who look for friends in places where they've been gone for a long time. The black mamba starts up with a low growl, like an old predator awakening from sleep. It's dark inside, the light from the street lamps gliding lazily across the dashboard. The wipers smear a thin layer of dirt across the windshield. Statham glances at Mark, fastens his seatbelt. Red Moon. Never liked this place. That's because you have an instinct for self-preservation, Mark answers, lighting a cigarette. In this club, if you're not with the right people, you'll either get ripped off, or shot, or both. Statham chuckles, turns onto the road. The music on the speakers is Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Red Right Hand. The bass notes roll through the car like an echo in a back alley. Outside the window, the ghetto still lives its ugly life. Small figures of children run barefoot on dirty sidewalks, adults stand in groups, lazily talking. The eyes of these people have learned not to ask questions. The graffiti on the walls seem like ancient cave paintings, telling stories of feud, blood, and hope that has long since passed into oblivion. A wolf pack, Mark drawls thoughtfully, blowing smoke out through his nose. What? I've always found it funny how gangs call themselves packs, prides, clans. Like they're animals. Statham is silent. Mark continues. But you know, wolves aren't just dumb animals. They're organized shit. A real hierarchy. Alpha, Beta, Omega. Everyone knows their place. What, have you started watching documentaries? Sometimes. But here's the thing. People copy wolves, but they forget one thing: in a real wolf pack, there are no loners. Wolves survive because they stick together. And people in such gangs, they will eat each other as soon as they smell money or problems. Statham nods, takes the turn. I knew one guy, he says, who kept a wolf. A real, tame one. Are you serious? Absolutely. This wolf lived in his country house. But you know what was funny? He kept it on a chain. Mark grins. Well, yeah. Because he understood, a wolf is a wolf. No matter how much it listens to you, one day you will turn around and it will already have its hands on your throat. Statham taps his fingers on the steering wheel. These bastards from the wolf pack are the same. They are kept on a chain as long as someone needs them. And then they just throw them away. Mark squints out the window. So the question is, what stage is Max in? Is he still on a chain, or is he running with his mouth torn open? Statham says nothing. Outside the window, the streets are changing. Dirt gives way to neon. The houses are taller, the cars are more expensive, but inside there is still the same rot. They are approaching the Red Moon, a club where the music is blaring while things happen in the dark corners that in a normal world would get you a life sentence. The thunder is slowing down. In front of them are the club's security, thugs with faces that have seen more bones than surgeons. Statham turns off the engine. Well, shall we go and see some old friends? Mark throws down his cigarette, crushing it with the toe of his boot. I hope they don't have a feeding day today. They get out of the car. The air smells of alcohol, cigarettes and predators that have long been unchecked. The door to the Red Moon Club opens and they are immediately hit with a wave of loud music, cheap alcohol and spicy smoke. The air is heavy, thick with sweat, perfume and something that smells like burnt caramel but probably isn't. The neon lights paint patterns of red and blue on the walls like police lights, but no one is calling the cops here. A loud, thumping beat, something from the Prodigy's Firestarter, reverberates through the room, pulsing in your chest like a second pulse. The crowd moves slowly, in a semi-conscious trance. People's eyes are empty, clouded. Some are lounging on the couches, some are dancing, barely moving their legs, some are just hanging out in the corner, talking to themselves or to someone who is long gone. Statham leads the way through the chaos, Mark following behind. They move toward the bar. There's a girl behind the bar. She's not just beautiful. She's like a painting that's been forgotten in this shithole. High cheekbones, long dark hair that's styled as if the wind has deliberately adjusted it. Deep green eyes that you can drown in if you linger for more than a few seconds. A red dress, tight, emphasizing every curve. She looks at them and smiles, like someone who knows more than she's saying. Mark notices her first and whistles. Wow. Tell me, Jason, when was the last time you saw such beauty in such shit? Statham doesn't even look at her, motioning to the bartender. The last time, when they tried to rob me. The girl laughs, a deep, slightly hoarse laugh. She leans over the bar toward them. You guys look like you're looking for more than just a drink. Statham picks up a glass of whiskey and takes a sip. We're looking for a friend. She nods. Max. Mark raises his eyebrows. Well, you're ahead of us. Not hard to guess. She glances around the club. Nobody's looking for friends in this place. They're losing friends here. Statham puts the glass back down, looks her straight in the eye. Where is he? She smiles wider, leans closer. I can take you there, if you don't mind a little fun along the way. Mark smirks. Having fun is always a good idea. Statham clicks his tongue, claps him on the shoulder. "You're a ladies' man. Maybe you'll stay here, start a family." The girl laughs. "You're funny, bald." Mark nods, grinning. He's only like that on the outside. She gets up from the counter, walks slowly past them. "So, guys, ready for the dark side of this place?" Statham stands up, adjusts his jacket. "We went into it in the parking lot." She leads them through the crowd, her red dress shimmering in the neon light. People part for her, not because they're afraid, but because they sense that she's here for a reason. They reach the back exit. She stops, turns to face them. He's there, behind that door. Statham looks at her, but her eyes are blank. Is there an ambush there? She smiles. Of course there is. Mark grins, takes out a cigarette. Well, at least it's fair. Statham puts his hand on the door handle. Time to find out what stage Max is in. The door opens. There's only darkness behind it. The door slammed shut behind them, cutting them off from the world. Dark. The darkness was so thick it felt like they could step forward and fall into nothingness. There were no shadows or shapes here, just a viscous blackness that clung to their skin, seeped into their lungs. There was a rustling sound somewhere on the edge of their hearing, or was that just their imagination playing tricks on them? That's how the dark always is, it shows nothing, but makes them see everything. Statham didn't move. Mark didn't either. Just their breath. The two of them. Or was it just them? "I never liked the dark," Mark said quietly. "Why?" "It's too honest." "Nonsense." "No, really. Light can lie, hide. And darkness? It hides nothing, it just is." Silence. And then. A flash. A shot. The bullet winds into the wall next to Statham's head. For a second, everything freezes. The light from the shot cuts out distorted silhouettes from the darkness, shadows that shouldn't exist. And then everything disappears again. They don't even say hello, Mark whispers, ducking. "The education is lame," Statham replies, pulling out his gun. Silence again. And this silence is heavier than the darkness itself. "How many do you think there are?" "Enough to keep us from relaxing." "What if we relax? Then we'll find out how many bullets are in each one." A second flash. For a moment, the room appears before my eyes, concrete walls, metal beams, barely distinguishable figures. But it's all too fast, a frame on film, torn off the tape. A bullet flies between them. Statham drops to one knee, aims his gun at nothing. It reminds me of hunting. What kind? Remember the video where the lion goes out to drink at night? It's dark all around, and suddenly, flash. And there's a crocodile. Third flash. Mark dodges, rolls to the side. "Do you know who you are in this story?" "Who?" "The lion with the gun." Statham pulls the trigger. Fourth flash. A short cry, the sound of a falling body. "There's one," he notes. Mark grins. Now imagine that all these flashes are just a moment in our lives. Like in a photo album. Click, and you're already a memory. If you don't mind, I'm not going to be a memory yet. Fifth flash. The second enemy falls. Then another. And another. And again darkness. Only now it's different. It's not just emptiness now. It's silence. This is the end. Mark gets up, dusts himself off. See? The darkness is honest. It just is. Statham puts the gun away. And now it's empty. The darkness lifted, but not right away. At first, just the smell. The smell of gunpowder and blood and iron. Then the sounds. The groan of a wounded man, the trembling breaths. And then a faint light seeping from a broken emergency lighting panel. Enemies lying on the floor, dead or about to die. Statham stands up slowly. Mark blinks. "What a bitch, that girlfriend of yours. I told you she'd set us up," Statham replies, shaking dust off his shoulder. "Well, technically, you didn't say. You were just frowning, and that's not a warning, you know." Statham rolls his eyes. But now is not the time to argue. Max sits on an iron chair, handcuffed to the bars of the cage. He looks like a man who has long since resigned himself to it. His eyes are clouded, his face pale. "A long time," he says hoarsely. Mark grins, checking the lock. "Listen, don't you think this is fucking symbolic?" "What exactly?" Max asks lazily. "You were on a leash. Like a dog that wasn't allowed to leave. You were held by a pack. They fed you, they decided when you would go to bed, when you would wake up." Max shrugs. "Maybe. No protest. Listen, a human is a herd animal, right?" Max exhales, looking at his handcuffs. "It's just, not everyone's herd is kind." Statham cuts the chain. "And now you're free." Max lifts his wrists, looks at the red marks from the metal. "You know what happens to a dog that gets loose from its chain?" "What?" "It either runs away, or bites whoever was holding it." Silence. Then Statham nods. "Time will tell." Max stands up, softening his fingers. "So what now?" While Mark looks for a way out, they peer into the room next door. And they see them. People. No, that's not it. Shadows from people. Those who don't remember why they live. Their eyes are empty, their bodies are thin, their lips are dry. These are the club guests who were kept here, doped up, until they were too weak to fight back. Mark blinks. "Shit." Statham clenches his fists. Max looks around slowly. "That's why they always came back," he says quietly. "Because there's no way out." "Maybe," Statham says. He grabs the first guy he sees by the shoulders. "Can you hear me? We're leaving." He blinks, as if he's just now remembering that he exists. Then he nods slowly. Yeah. The others start to stir like blind kittens. A bottle falls. Someone coughs. Then everyone moves. Slowly, unsteadily. But they move. They lead them out into the hallway. There are sounds. Stomping. "They're coming," Statham says calmly. "How long?" Mark asks. Max listens. "About 2 minutes." Mark flicks his lighter. "Well, that's enough to set up a meeting." He pulls out some explosives from an old job. Max raises his eyebrows. "Always carry bombs?" "Sure. You never know when you'll have to make a graceful exit." "It's been planted. The timer's been set. Everyone's ready." "Well, gentlemen," Mark says, opening the door to the street. "Time to go." They step outside. The wind. The streets are dirty. Other people's cars. But no one pays them any attention. People scatter, disappearing into alleys without even looking back. "They're like ghosts," Max mutters. "They just have nothing left to lose," Statham replies. The seconds tick by. And then. Bang! Flames tear through the building, neon lights explode, debris crashes down. The club is destroyed. The wolf pack didn't make it. The three of them stand in front of the burning building. "Well, that was spectacular," Max says. "I told you so," Mark smiles. Statham looks at the fire. "Everything's burned." "Yeah. You're free now." Max is silent. Then. "We'll see." They get into the car. The engine starts. The wheels crunch on the asphalt. And they drive away from this damned neighborhood. Los Angeles. They drive down the street, and there's something different in the air. The neon doesn't seem so bright anymore. People move more calmly. The city seems to have woken up. The clouds in the sky have begun to part, the first light is creeping between the buildings. Listen, have you ever noticed how the city always looks different after a storm? Max asks, looking out the window. Oh yeah, Mark nods. Like a drunk who just puked and is now going to start his life over. Or like a person who just got rid of unnecessary baggage, Statham adds. Or like a club that just fucking burned down, Max grins. All three laugh. The car slides along the road. It's still the same black Mamba, but now there are three of us in it. Jason Statham. Mark. Max. Max is sitting in the back, his head leaning against the glass. For the first time in a long time, he looks calm. Statham is driving, his gaze focused but not tense. Mark is sprawled in the passenger seat, legs stretched out, head bobbing to the music. And the music is perfect. The Rolling Stones, Painted Black, is blaring through the speakers. It's ironic, of course. After everything that happened, after the explosion, after the destroyed club, black just doesn't seem right anymore. More like red. To be honest, I can still see that explosion, Mark drawls, looking at the road. Yeah, Max nods, smiling slightly. As if I could see it in front of my eyes. It was like. Mark falls silent, choosing his words. Like a flower, Statham adds. They both turn to him. What? Mark snorts. Like a flower, Jason repeats calmly. A red flower. Mark grins. Oh, you're a fucking poet. Think about it. A flash, a flame, petals of fire spreading out. Red as a poppy. Max blinks. That's an interesting analogy. Of course, Mark chuckles. But you know, a flower usually means something. Yeah, Max nods. A poppy, for example, means memory. Or death. Well, in this case, both are valid, Statham shrugs. Max runs his hand over his face and takes a deep breath. It's still weird. Just 1 minute I was sitting in a cage, and now I'm riding with you. How did you even get there? Mark asks, lazily flicking through the radio. Max is silent for a few seconds, looking out the window. I thought I found a family. Mark raises his eyebrows. In a pack. Max nods. When you have no one, you grab onto those who offer warmth. They did. I agreed. And then I realized that warmth comes in different forms. Silence. Statham shifts gears, the car accelerates smoothly. Max shakes his head. Funny. Remember what you said about the dog on a chain? Mark grins. Of course, I say smart things, they are hard to forget. Well, I was that dog. They threw me a bone, and I sat there, wagging my tail. Statham chuckles. And now? Max grins, lifting his head slightly. Now I'm a wolf who chewed off his own paw to escape a trap. Mark laughs. I bet you just made that up. Yeah. Okay, you get credit.